Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The self-proclaimed peacemaker, the man who promised to stop all wars, the man aiming for a Nobel Peace Prize this year, has just entered the Iran-Israel conflict, pushing the world to possibly World War III. Once again, US President Donald Trump has trumped and stumped the entire world. In what the Supreme Commander of the US Armed Forces called a spectacular military success, 7 of the world's most expensive military aircraft flew with never-before-used bunker-buster bombs, a 37-hour-long non-stop flight that ended up dropping bombs weighing 13,000 kgs each on 3 of Iran's most prominent nuclear sites. Now, the surprise aerial assault was part of a covert operation called Midnight Hammer. It marked the most extensive B-2 bomber mission in US history and the US's official entry into the Israel-Iran conflict. This is the first US strike in Iran ever. The operation involved decoys and deception, not just in the flight path of the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, but also in Trump's statements, from saying that a decision on whether to strike Iran or not is due in 2 weeks, just 3 days ago, to sitting in the Situation Room as his billion-dollar Avengers pounded Iran. The US president's demeanor and decision-making have both been a mystery yet to be decoded. It will be in the next 72 hours. Meanwhile, the Nobel Peace Prize nominee has now started a war that he claimed would end all wars. But Iran is not willing to give in to these threats of worse consequences in case of a retaliation. Iran is warning of regrettable consequences. It is saying that the US and Israel bombed diplomacy by short-circuiting ongoing negotiations and talks. Israel, meanwhile, as expected, has welcomed the direct US intervention, but doomsday fears loom large for the rest of the world as the biggest superpowers slowly align and realign themselves on either side of red lines that have newly been drawn and crossed this morning. In 20 minutes of bombings, ladies and gentlemen, much has changed in the Middle East. Iran says all US assets are now fair game. Iran's foreign minister, in fact, is saying that diplomacy is not an option anymore after the US's strikes, as there is no red line that the US has not crossed in the midnight strike. Iran's foreign minister is set to travel to Moscow to meet with Russia's President Vladimir Putin, who has not just condemned the attack, but is also saying that our nations who are willing to offer their nuclear warheads to Iran. Saber-rattling here. China, too, has slammed the US for violating the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law, and further escalating the tensions in West Asia. As preliminary images of the damages in Iran start to emerge from Fordo, from Natanz, and from Isfahan as well, Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairperson of Russia's Security Council, is saying that the US strikes have not achieved much, except that now a number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. Now, with the US insisting that regime change was not the motive, and Israel signaling the possibility that the military campaign will end if US strikes are shown to have destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities, all eyes are now on whether the Iran versus Israel war will widen in scope and scale. Will other global superpowers help make the crisis better or worse?
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
We are now calculating the damages And as I said, the damages are not only for our nuclear facilities, the damages are for the United Nations Charter. It was not only Iran's facilities which was bombed, it was also the United Nations Charter. It was also non-proliferation regime and NPT, which was bombed last night by Americans. And it was the rule of law and international law which was bombed. So now we have to see how much room is left for diplomacy, and we will decide.
Is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program.
The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression.
How much worse will it get before it gets better? And will it even get better? What happens next? What if the NATO enters the conflict in the Middle East if US assets are targeted by Iran? It's a dangerous situation and a dangerous escalation, ladies and gentlemen, we are seeing in the Middle East. Question is, what happens next? My guests this evening, let me quickly introduce them to you. They are on your screens. Ambassador Yash Sinha is a former diplomat joining us on the broadcast. Brahmachalani is a strategic affairs expert joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much. Sudhendra Kulkarni is a columnist. Thank you for your time. Ray Locker is a journalist and author joining us from the United States of America. Major General Yaakov Amidror is a former national security advisor of Israel joining us. Major General, thank you very much. Fred Weir is a Russian expert. He's a journalist joining us on the broadcast. And Niva Taveli is an Iranian journalist with us on the broadcast as well. First things first, thank you all very much for your time. Major General, can I come to you? You've been a national security advisor of Israel. Can I ask you where you see the conflict in the Middle East headed? Will it get worse before it gets better?
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. I think that you are very much exaggerating. It is not going to be a whole world conflict. It's not going to be the third world of the world. The tension between Pakistan and India is much, much more worried than the tension between Israel and Iran. The Iranians in India and Pakistan, both sides has nuclear capability, and from the outside of the conflict, everyone is more worried about that than about what will happen between Israel and Iran, with all due respect to Israel and Iran. The Americans came for one purpose. The Iranians have had a facility in Fordo, which Israel could not destroy. And because both countries understand that the Iranians should not have nuclear military capability, we decided to go to the war. By the way, the war was begun by the Iranians, not by us. In April and in October, the Iranians launched missiles and drones into Israel. I think the number is more than 300 missiles and 200 drones into Israel. So the war was begun by Iran, not by Israel. But in this case, we decided that we are going to destroy, as a self-defense act, the ability of the Iranians to achieve nuclear military capability. We destroyed what we can, for those could not be achieved by Israel, and this is why the Americans did it. And from the American point of view, as far as I understand, there is no any continuation. It's the end of the intervention of the Americans. It very much depends now on Iran. If the Iranians decide to kill Americans, the Americans will react, no question.
Okay.
And they prepare themselves for the reaction. Many forces are around. So Israel is continuing now to destroy facilities in Iran, launchers of missiles, stores of missiles, some remnants of the nuclear capability, At the end, we have two goals, and it was declared from the beginning. We don't want the Iranians to have nuclear military capability and long-range ballistic missile to attack Israel.
Okay. Major General, you have argued in the last 2 to 3 minutes that the situation between Iran and Israel and in the Middle East is much better than what it was between India and Pakistan, given that India and Pakistan both are nuclear-armed nations. But India and Pakistan didn't have the United States of America inserting itself right in the middle of the conflict, deploying its bunker bombs, bunker-busting bombs, the big boys as it were. So I would say that the situation in the Middle East is as grave, if not more. But Nima, just come in here. As an Iranian, how do you respond to what the Major General from Israel is saying? He's been a former national security advisor in the country. He says, essentially, Iran is paying the price for what it did. Iran is the one that started the war and now has to bear the consequences. My own fear is that the world will have to bear the consequences of this.
What it is, what he just said, and I can't take it seriously, and any adult of sane mind doesn't take what he says seriously, because most of us have a memory that stretches longer than 10 days. Operation True Promise 1 was a reaction to Israeli provocation. Operation True Promise 2 was a response to Israeli military attack on Iranian soil. Let's remember how this started. You know, it's funny that they always play the victims. It's never their fault. They're just, they attack 5 countries, occupy 3 countries since 1967 in direct violation of every single aspect of international law, but they are the victims. And I say they, as in, because now, I think after the report from ABC News that came out that the US and Israel had practiced this specific attack in a military exercise about a year ago, it was first planned under the Biden administration, Israeli sources confirmed to ABC News. And yesterday, the Zionist TV channel, 14, quote, said, even the supposedly leaked reports about a tense Netanyahu-Vance phone call were part of the deception, adding that the Americans connected us to the internal video network of the government and the military. That's how close the coordination was. So basically, what we now know, together with all those statements that you started this program with, from Zakharova referring to what Merz, the German chancellor, said about how Israel is doing their dirty work, moving on to Peskov saying that a nuclear attack on Iran would be catastrophic, moving on to what Putin said, that the same people that are attacking us are the people behind the scenes that are attacking Iran, to what Medvedev today said, that that now we can't exclude that other countries could give Iran nuclear weapons. And also, this last point was echoed a few days earlier by Victor Gao, who's a member of the Revolutionary Committee of the Chinese Kuomintang, which is a minor and non-oppositional party under the direction of the Chinese Communist Party. And he said, if other countries want to join the fight on the side of Israel, you never want to exclude the possibility of other major countries wanting to fight on the side of Iran, because the war imposed on Iran is a war of aggression. Now, this finally proves once and for all, if there ever was any doubt, that the Zionist regime is an Anglo-American military base and settler colony posing as a state. It isn't. Israel is the dog. The Zionist oligarchy that owns and controls the entire US government wholesale is the owner. And this is where we are. Israel started this, and Israel will receive the response. Let's remember, this war ends tonight if Israel stops attacking Iran. Iran has been crystal clear from the get-go. The off-ramp is this: you attacked us while we were preparing to go to negotiations with the US in Oman, in a sneak attack, in a Pearl Harbor moment, which is what it's been dubbed as. And if you continue, we respond. That's what prompted Iran to launch Operation True Promise 3.
Nima, I have a counter question for you before I let the Major General from Israel come in. The point is, I'm not sure whether the strikes that happened this morning, Operation Midnight Hammer, was wargamed by Israel and the United States of America a year ago. I understand that the ABC news channel is reporting that in America. That may be true, that may not be true, but it's eminently sensible for any country planning such a major strike to wargame it, number one. Number two, what does it change? The fact is that the United States of America and Trump for the last 10 years has been very clear that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Now, if you are in a position to make nuclear weapons, that your uranium enrichment program has reached a program where it has weapon-grade uranium, many people will say Iran should have expected the strike.
Iran has negotiated with the United States over this. Let's remember, this didn't start, again, let's have a slightly longer memory than a week. For 7 years, Iran has negotiated and agreed. The JCPOA, if people remember that, who was it that left that after that agreement was found under the Obama administration? Well, Obama, on the very next day, started violating it. Trump just tore it up. Iran, despite that, stayed with it, for complying with every aspect of the JCPOA for 12 months before gradually beginning to withdraw from it. This, Iran has bent over backwards trying to placate these people who have shown that diplomacy for them is nothing than to lull their enemies to sleep before they attack them. And also the 60% enriched uranium, that's not weapons-grade uranium. Let's be clear here. And let's understand when that enrichment took place. It took place almost 2 years down the line after Iran tried to negotiate to end this crisis. It is absurd to sit here and suggest otherwise. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Everyone is not entitled to their own set of facts.
Ray Locker, you're a journalist, you're an American journalist, you're joining us on the broadcast as well. The argument that Iran is giving is something that you've heard. They've been saying this for the last 8 to 10 hours, that you have essentially murdered diplomacy and any attempt at peace. I want to ask you whether the Americans actually think that they've pushed Iran to a corner where Iran will have no option but to retaliate. I mean, look at this. You have gone inside a country. In 20 minutes, you have bombed 3 of their nuclear facilities, the pillars of their nuclear enrichment program. What do you expect them to do? My point is, if, so far it's not happened, but if they decide to target assets, American assets in the region, and there are some 40,000 troops there, plus the 5th Fleet is in the region as well, what happens? This then becomes World War III, because this will ensure that NATO enters the war.
Well, I don't know if we're going to get to a World War III situation, but the fact is, anybody who thinks this is a one-and-done strike, the problem has been solved, hasn't been paying attention to world history for the last, 100 years? I mean, the United States' record in Iran is not clean. We overthrew the Mossadegh government in 1953. You know, it created a series of bad will in the region for a long time. We propped up the Shah. He had his problems that obviously led to the Iranian Revolution in 78, 79. They took hostages there. They supported Hezbollah. There's a lot of bad blood, a lot of history. Despite all that, we reached a nuclear deal in 2015, and it seemed to be working. Trump got rid of it because that's what he does. Oh, well, claim we can get a better deal. Prove it. Well, guess what? He didn't get a better deal. And then when he thought he could do something and make it all go away in one move, he went for it. It doesn't work that way. It never works that way. And when will we learn that lesson? I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Iran has been a regional menace, and people can agree and disagree about that. There's reasons to think, wow, if we made this problem go away, it would be great. But it doesn't work that way. And so there's going to be a response. We don't know when it's going to be. You know, after we took out Soleimani in 2020, oh, it's going to be great. And then there was a response, and Trump tried to sweep it under the rug, and it was worse than people thought. And so now we know you blockade the Straits of Hormuz, oil prices are going to skyrocket. Talk about wargaming. We've wargamed multiple things with the Iranians, and we know what can happen, and we know the downsides. So to think, oh, everything's great, is, I think, really foolish. I would not be surprised if Trump was thinking that, because his memory goes back like 15 seconds and his forward thinking goes maybe 30 seconds ahead of time. I don't have confidence in this national security team, and I worry about the future.
Well, all of us are worried about the future. Is the world closer, to a nuclear war? Well, it's closer to a nuclear war than it was 2 weeks ago, but we'd all like to believe it's not inevitable. I'm just going to get Brahma Chalani, he's a strategic expert, into the broadcast. Mr. Chalani, good evening. Iran is threatening to do something it has never done in the years of conflict that it has seen. Block the Strait of Hormuz. I want to ask you whether you think they will actually do it, because it will be economic suicide for them. And where do you see the situation in the Middle East escalating? What is the worst case scenario that you can paint right now?
First, let's remember one basic fact. The US bombed 3 key nuclear sites in Iran, each of which was under international safeguards of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So this bombing not only undermines the authority and inspection regime of the International Atomic Energy Agency, but also violates the principles of the NPT, as well as international law, including the UN Charter. Now, as to what can happen next, I think just look at the satellite imagery of the US strikes, especially the strike on Fordo, which was regarded as Iran's main nuclear enrichment facility. The satellite imagery shows that despite dropping 12 bunker-busting bombs, the main facility, the main building, remains intact. And this illustrates the point that Israeli Prime Minister's own current national security advisor acknowledged on Israeli television after Israel began the war against Iran. He said that Iran's program cannot be destroyed by military means alone. He said that a negotiated settlement was the only sustainable option. But as we all know, that Israel's war against Iran has caused the collapse of nuclear diplomacy and deepened Iranian hostility. So Israel may be forcing Iran now towards a very nuclear path Israel wants to prevent, which is it could be compelling Iran to go nuclear now. Iran can emulate the example of North Korea. In 2003, North Korea withdrew from the NPT, ejected IAEA inspectors, and weaponized its nuclear assets at speed. Iran is already heavily sanctioned, increasingly isolated. It may now conclude, after being attacked both by Israel and the US, that it has little to lose from following the example of North Korea. And if Iran raises its enrichment level from 60% to 90% purity, 90% purity is what you need for weapons grade, that's a short technical leap. It could rapidly convert its uranium stockpile into bomb-grade material. In other words, what Trump has done could actually facilitate a historic failure of US non-proliferation strategy and hand Tehran the strategic nuclear deterrent it has long claimed not to seek.
Major General Amidror, I'm just going to get a quick response from you. Through the day today, that is one analysis, one point of view that we have heard, that essentially what the US action, US strike in Iran has done is push Iran closer towards acquiring nuclear warheads. Is that a belief you share?
First of all, remember, all of you, the fact that the international watchdog the head of the watchdog, Mr. Grossi, told the world the day before Israel attacked Iran that the Iranians cheated the agency in the last 20 years. It is not Israeli claim. It is the international watchdog. We say they lied us all the way in the last 20 years, first. Second, North Korea is a good example. The Americans didn't attack North Korea. They thought the North Korean promises, like the Iranians, they will not, they will do, they obey, whatever. And the end of that, North Korea has a nuclear capability. If there is any example that should not be taken as a good example, it's North Korea, because the Americans didn't take and gave the North Korea the ability to produce the nuclear bomb. We will not let Iran to do the same. Whatever you will say about what should be done, we understood that the Iranians are very close to the bomb. The weaponization inside Iran began. We have very good intelligence from within the weaponization group that they are going to have a nuclear bomb. And we decided that it is the last time. Tomorrow will be too late, and we will stop them. With the American or without the American. The Americans came in after a week, and it's okay. We're more than happy that they did the job in Fordo. Now the ball is in the Iranian court.
Okay, give me a minute here. There's a big piece of breaking news coming in. But before that, Fred, I'm coming to you. You're a Russia expert. We are looking at what possibly are the scenarios that could build up in the Middle East in the next 48 to 72 hours. I want to ask you whether Russia's proclamation that there are many countries willing to offer Iran their nuclear warheads is true, and whether Russia would be crazy enough to offer their warheads to them.
Well, I'm sure that the Russians are deeply alarmed right now.
Okay.
I don't think they expected this direct American intervention, and I believe the midnight oil will be burning in the Kremlin as they recalibrate all their calculations. Okay. But the thing that has to be stressed here is that Iran and Russia are not military allies.
Correct.
The strategic partnership between them is very warm, very close, and relations were growing closer, but there is not an obligation on Russia's part to come to Iran's defense. That is, by the way, different from Russia's treaty with North Korea, which does have a mutual defense clause. Okay. And the North Koreans recently sent troops to Kursk to fight Ukrainians who were invading Russian territory there in accordance with that treaty. That is not the case with Iran, and I don't think the Russians will intervene militarily in any way, much less by giving nuclear weapons to Iran.
Can I just interrupt you here? Because, there is a significant piece of news that is breaking on our screens. This really is also, in a sense, the war of narratives. Complete annihilation, obliteration is the word that the U.S. president has used, especially for the Fordo nuclear site in Iran, saying it's been completely obliterated. Now there are reports in the U.S. media. In fact, there is a New York Times report that is saying that the Fordo nuclear site has not been destroyed after U.S. strikes. Now, there are some satellite images that are showing some signs of some sort of damage, but Iran already earlier in the day had said that what the U.S. president has said is an overstatement. Now it seems the New York Times is confirming what Iran has been saying, that their Fordo nuclear site has actually not been destroyed after the U.S. strikes. Gentlemen, can I just request you to stay with me? I have a commercial compulsion. I do need to slip into a break, but this discussion continues. Do stay on with us.
The News Hour, Special Edition.